introduce you. I'll do a little intro and then I'll bring you in and we'll get going. So fun. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Wake Her Up. Today is super special. We are talking about the power of meditation, which is fitting so well into this beautiful week where we're talking about the power of hygge, leaning into just being chill, letting our bodies trust the season. And I'm so excited to talk about meditation. So I am not like some expert at all in meditation, but the little bit that I have done with meditation has drastically changed my life. I could say it is the reason I am here doing all of this, is because I learned how to turn off my thoughts and sit and just be. And there is something that fundamentally shifts your existence when you learn that you exist without doing anything, without thinking anything, without planning anything, without really figuring anything out. When you're just sitting and being, and you realize that you exist beyond thought, that for me changed everything. For me, that meant that I existed without even my family. I existed without money. I existed without success. I existed without having to do the dishes or the laundry or even having to do a podcast. I existed whether I was doing things or not. And in a world where we are striving constantly to become something better and better and more, it does totally shift everything when you realize, wait, I don't have to do anything to exist. I don't have to accomplish anything to exist. I can just be, and I will still be whole. Then when you go and do things, it's just bonus. It's extra fun. It's not for you to go and be filling in gaps of yourself. It's for you to just experience being out here, being in the world, however you want to be, but it is not taking away or adding to your existence. And for me, that was completely opposite of how I was existing in the world. I thought I was here to like add to myself so that at the end there I would be whole. And that is not true. So I am so thrilled today to, one, have been personally introduced to Susan Taylor. She is an expert, you could say scientist, in this incredible world of meditation. She has spent years and years developing her practice, her expanding her education, practicing with so many of hundreds, thousands of other people. And to find out more about Susan Taylor, please go to susantaylor.org and read her bio. It's beautiful. The experiences that she has had, the education that she's been able to consume is really beyond words. She has written so many scientific papers as well as publications, from the Yoga of Mind, Medicine and Healing, the Vital Energy Program, Sexual Radiance, and the Healing Power of Meditation CDs. She hosts a Rethink Health podcast. I mean, it's amazing to be able to have her. It is such an honor. And without further ado, let's bring her in. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I've been so looking forward to this. Thank you so much for being here and giving us of your time and your energy and your talent. It's such a pleasure to have you.
It's wonderful to be here. I was looking forward to it myself, actually.
Well, I am excited to just dive right in. But before we do, I'd love for, I can introduce you all day long, but I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about you. How did you end up in this space, and where did you start in your yoga in your
No. We could define it. You're correct. In yoga, we could define it because meditation is part of that. That's why we do yoga, which is really asana. We really do that because we want to get the body fit so that we can sit for periods of time and do the practices. I started very young, well, over 40 years, 50 years ago, and I found I just found a very wonderful place and met a master, and my father introduced me. And I didn't get started quite then, but I was always interested in it, in developing self development, because my work has always been with the mind. So, right, where do you want to go when you talk about the mind? And you, in your introduction, it took me quite a while to still, it's continual. It's not over, it's constantly working with the mind and not. I just noticed my battery is going to be dead on my
Oh
computer.
no,
I kicked it. It's unplugged. So let me put that in.
let's not lose you.
No, you won't lose me. Sorry. It's early for me. Okay. So I just noticed it and I'm glad I did because we would have been disconnected, everyone. And I like to be connected. So it's like everyone else, I'm a human being. And so you have all these things come to you. And as you said, we always identify with the outside of we have to be somebody, not be someone, especially as females, we're programmed, and I'm sure males are, but my work is with women. Uh, and so, the podcast that I do is the meditative shift, not Rethink Health. So it used to be Rethink Health.
Okay.
But the whole idea of meditative shift is to bring us into that place where you spoke, where we're going inside for the answers and not outside. That's why I say meet yourself. And we talked about that a few weeks ago. So that's how I got started, where I wanted to find answers and solutions to how to live life in a healthy, functional way, rather than, I mean, I went through things that everyone else goes through, especially a woman going through changes that are constantly changing every month. How do you deal with the emotions? How do you deal with the mindset? How do you deal with the bodily changes? Doing all of this together is really what yoga science is all about. I teach the principles of yoga science. When we talk about yoga in this culture, it's your water bottle that people can't get away from, your spandex and your thing under your arm, and you run into class. It's so much more than that. It's how to really have clear, calm, and tranquil mind. And that's the whole idea. So I came into it for that reason. And it wasn't conscious. I just knew I just knew I had to do something. I didn't say, oh, when you're 18, 17, 16, you don't say, oh, I have to go learn how to meditate. I didn't even know what the word meant. Or
That's how I felt when someone said, like, oh, meditate. I'd hear it on a podcast, I'd hear it in a book, and I'd think, what are we doing? Are we laying on a yoga mat? Like, what does that even mean?
Well, it's also the way it's this, we have to be very careful too, or mindful, or I don't like to use the word mindful, be aware. I like the word awareness. We really have to be aware because we have soundbite knowledge on the internet right now. So we've taken traditions of brought down through the sages, And what in our culture, what we've done is I'll take a piece of this, maybe a little mindfulness here, maybe a little something here, maybe a little something there. And they make these complete programs. And then people wonder, well, why don't I want to meditate? Why am I not feeling the self-transformation happen? And it's because we have soundbite knowledge with a bunch of experts that it's insanity right now on the internet. So, and the piece that I contribute, if anything, or serve, is to provide something that was passed down through the sages with no little edit that I'm going to do and put it under my name. You see, because then it becomes polluted like everything else, and there's no real knowledge. Meditation is difficult. So, and I don't teach meditation. I teach the tools in which someone can develop their own meditative experience. There's a big difference.
I love that. I love that so much because it has to be individual. right? I mean,
Everyone, and we are all individuals. We all have a different thumbprint. I mean, we're all individuals. And what we need to do is have tools. Now, there are tools. And see, in some of these, people don't teach the tools in a systematic way. They need to be done systematically to have results. And I, I've seen it. I've worked for 20 years teaching healthcare providers since I have a medical background. And so I've worked with healthcare and I enjoyed it tremendously teaching healthcare providers. And then, as you know, I've done some work with the Department of Defense. And now, after I met you, and I'm so grateful that, maybe it's time to broaden that perspective and really work with people that are really interested, sincere students that really want to learn how to bring themselves into the meditative shift. As I said, I'd rather say a meditative shift because we're shifting consciousness. We're moving, to the internal guide. And that's foreign to most people. And it doesn't just come overnight. And some people get the glimpse, but how? How do we sustain the practice? That's the key. Are we in that glimpse? So people talk about these awakenings. How do you maintain that awakening? You don't just
yes,
maintain that at the same level that you have the awakening. And that's where that's the tools that I teach. Let me give you the foundation so that you can hold on to your experience as opposed to someone telling you you need to do this, this, and this. Because we all have the power within ourselves to even heal. We just don't know how to use it. And
yes.
I love to give people tools on how to use it within themselves.
I
That's
love that.
that's it in a nutshell, non-rehearsed. Let's just, that's what we want. And I look for sincere students. I look for sincere people that want to do things because I'm ready to give. I'm at that stage of life. I'm a lot older than you, and I'm ready to give what I've learned and move it forward so people could enjoy where they are. I mean, right now we have such a flux of anxiety, depression. People think they're going, let's talk about even going through perimenopause, menopause, etc. They're going through that thinking it's normal to have all of these issues. Well, it's because the body's not healthy. It's not stable when it goes in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's no one there to show what does that mean? Because we're in what we call in yoga science Kali Yoga. And I call it the false prophets, profits, because people are, what do I eat? What do I do? How do I meditate? Oh, wait, meditate. I can do this app. I can do this. I can do that. All of it is meant well. I hope. I would like to have a positive attitude, but I don't think it's sustainable. That's just been my experience.
I
Yeah.
I completely agree. And that's one of the things we talk about, I mean, wake her up is the basis of that is waking up yourself to find the answers within yourself, not the buy now button, not the, next guru that says they have the magical one way of doing it. It's, looking maybe at some examples, understanding the tools, but really in the end, like listening to yourself. And so I before we get into like maybe what some of those beginning tools would be for someone as far as what they can do to kind of stir up themselves in finding their own practice, what like if you could go back to some of the first times you were implementing and trying to figure out meditation for you, what did that look like for you? Were you going to a yoga studio? Were you just sitting calm? Like,
No, when I
walk me
started,
through, like, what did that look like when you were trying to figure out, I don't know, I call it the off button, like when you were trying to figure that out, walk me through some of that.
I never had the, now remember, I'm a lot older. So I didn't go as an off button. I grew up right near the Himalayan Institute because my father brought me there when I was in seventh grade, and that's where I met the groups that I've worked with. And I went in, I remember, to a Hatha class working, and everybody would wear the white kurtas at the time. And I went in, and I used to go in with my mom, and I used to go in and take these classes. And I always loved activity. I was always wanting to be an athlete. And so I just did it for, I always felt good. I never thought I want to turn off my mind and all there was none of that because my mind wasn't on, I didn't have an iPhone, I didn't have an internet, didn't have a computer, I didn't have to turn anything off.
Interesting.
Now it's a whole different trajectory. So we have to, in the way I modify, the way I give people tools, is I understand this. I'm not going back to where I was. I can't because it's not fair to where people are today. We have to speak to where we are today. Today, meditation is different the way you teach it compared to even where it was 20, 30 years ago. Now it has to be so specific, detailed, systematic. You can't just go and see who she is. You could, but the chances are hitting that target are a lot less. So if you give a systematic approach, when I first started teaching, we can say, and we'll go to that point, and I listened to a lot of other instructors, as I am an instructor, and they'd say, just breathe or just relax. You don't just relax. You have to be taught how to breathe and how to relax because our culture, we don't blame ourselves for not knowing. Our culture is created right now to be faster, distract your mind, take your mind out. And I tell people, take your mind back, bring it back home, bring it back to yourself because the mind is a powerful tool. The thought is the mind. And there's nothing wrong with having thoughts. It's when they decide to take over. You see, these subtle happenings are what need to be put into this matrix, if you will, or this formula, so that when it happens, people will be able to use it. People can't just listen to me today, let's say, give them a few pointers. I can give them an exercise to do, let's say, but we're talking, let's say 65, 35, 45 years of just beginning now. I'm still feeling like I'm just a beginner. And every time I sit on my cushion, I use my cushion as counsel. I always have. And I sit, I have a systematic formula that I go through, the same exact one. And it's so interesting you said that. People used to say, "Oh, what meditation are we going to do today?" No, it's the same one. If you want to go see, you say, wait, her, we'll call it to be her. If you want to see the divine within yourself, each day you do the same exact road. If you want to go to the store that's over there, you're not going to keep doing this every day and go a different path. You might. That's the human mind, and that's the new generation. They want something new every 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. That's why these apps, that's why I don't want to use the word app, but these types of emails that are coming through, something different color, different, that is actually destructive to what we're talking about. It's the antithesis of what we're talking about. So I could say when I started, I was given a formula, giving the mantra. Mantras just don't come from space. You don't sell them. They come from masters, from a lineage. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't want to sit and do the practices because I go, oh God, I can't do this. It wasn't like, oh, I'm in nirvana sitting down. No, my legs hurt, my back hurt. I couldn't concentrate for more than a nanosecond, if that. And so having all these deficits within myself, now when I go to provide the tools, I take that into consideration and I'll give more instruction so that doesn't happen to someone else. You see, because years and years, decades ago, you sit down, do your practice. They didn't tell you should feel this, it wasn't that kind of a directive. You had your own experience. And you could still have your own experience, but given the climate that we're in now, to be nurturing for others, I find that giving them specifics that they could find it still within themselves, not telling them what they're going to feel, but give them the specifics so that they have a better turnout, easier, not having to, there's so much going on now. You don't want to make things too difficult.
I think it's really interesting to talk to someone that is so knowledgeable in this, but also is just so open to understanding that there's not a way, that the way to have this meditative experience is to listen to yourself and to create a practice that is right for you? I know that for me, I felt the same way. I was like, okay, let's do this meditation thing, and I was listening to these people talk about how they did their meditation, and I would listen to, uh, you know, meditative things on YouTube and try to figure out like what that was. And then I'd go to yoga and I'd listen to how they were doing meditation. And then I'd listen to a book and I'd try that. And I dabbled in all these different methods and how other people were doing it. But in the end, it it ended up being me listening to me, trying to connect with me. It wasn't a way that somebody else could walk me through. It was me just experiencing different things, practicing different things. And I remember laying in a yoga class, and this beautiful yoga instructor, um, so talented in understanding what was going on in the room. And she could constantly say, hey, if your thoughts, if you're, doing your grocery list right now, don't be mad about that, like just kind of acknowledge that it's there. And if you don't want to be there, you can choose to go somewhere else, and it was like this allowance, like you said, allowance that thoughts could be there, allowance and awareness of like, that's my brain, that's my thoughts, and I didn't have to yell at it, that it was in the way of my meditation. I could just kind of choose to be where I wanted to be within my own body, within my own soul and thoughts. And I remember her saying to focus on the breath, and that the breath would drown out the thoughts. That never happened for me. I could never breathe loud enough, for my thoughts to be gone. And one time, and it was just these little tiny things that kind of added up to my own experience. But one time, out of the blue, she said, if that's not working for you, just maybe change your thoughts into I am breathing in, I am breathing out. If that is what you're wanting to do, like, I invite you to do that. And I don't know what that was for me, but that was a huge shift, because it gave my mind something to say, something to do, which it really needed that at the time, not a grocery list or a marketing campaign that I was doing in yoga class. And for me, that shift in being able to choose my thoughts and not have them controlling me and overwhelming me, that was a moment that kind of shifted me into what I had been trying to get to, of this meditative space of not having my mind control me, but me saying, this is where I would like to be. And I just love your approach to this in helping people find like what it is for them. So I really appreciate that.
But meditation, MEDI, that means to attend to. So you're attending to the mind field, and then beyond the mind field, of course. Your breath is not going to erase thoughts necessarily. That doesn't happen. Your breath, when I worked with, everybody wanted to do mind body. I'm doing mind body. Well, I would ask people, well, what does that mean? And what connects the mind and the body? And most people can't answer that. What connects your mind and your body? It's the breath.
It's tricky. Oh,
so whenever you bring your breath under, it's the only autonomic function that can be brought under conscious control that you have access to. So that's why the teachers say, go to your breath. But how do you do your breath? You see, we have to really be systematic. So although I'm saying that you have your own experience, I'm not saying have your own meditation and do it the way you feel like it. There's a big difference. Like, I'm just going to sit and do it in the bathtub, or I'm going to sit here. No, the more structured you are, not with your freedom, but the more structured you are with working with this physical element, the more you'll keep things easier and streamlined for the mind to function the way it needs to. And that's the key. And that's where, so if we give for example, adjust your posture, head, neck, and trunk need to be aligned for neurological reasons. I'm giving people the physical because if I go into the ethereal, people aren't ready to hear that most of the time. So let's talk about the physical. The body needs to be in a straight, the spine needs to be straight. Head, neck, and trunk need to be aligned. You're not going to meditate like this. You can go to sleep and relax like that, but that's not meditation. And you usually do fall asleep if you do it when you lie down. Then you have to adjust your breath. You have to regulate your breath. Unless you know how to breathe from the diaphragm, you're wasting your time. Your thoughts are going to go into anxiety. You're either holding your breath or breathing too rapidly. Anytime you breathe with your chest, you're creating the anxiety. That's your body. Your body comes into fight or flight when you do that. Then
So
we
when
hold our breath.
for step one, if we're going to break this down, are you typically sitting like cross-legged, sitting
Oh,
on the
that's a
ground, or are
good,
you
very
sitting
good question.
on a pillow? What are
You could
you?
sit any way you want as long as your head, neck, and trunk are aligned. So for some people, I had people that couldn't walk in class. They sit on a chair. We prop the chair. I teach people how to prop their chair so that they're comfortable. That's the biggest obstacle. People can't sit because they're not comfortable. And then people say, "Well, just go lay down. Try this I see you have to do a meditation if you want success. If you want success, you can play around and try these other things that you see. But unless you have a complete practice that's handed down through 33,000 years, as opposed to, oh, I didn't make anything up. I'm just instructing what was passed down to me. And it hasn't been edited. That's the key. Oh, well, if you don't like that, don't do, oh, skip the breathing. Just go to feeling like you're in the flower field. I've heard people tell me that. Well, you can do that. That's fantasy and that's relaxation, whatever. But if you really want a systematic way to, I'm going to use your word, wake her up, or as I say, meet yourself, it does happen spontaneously. It does happen. But if you'd like to be able to have awareness of how that happens and bring it into your conscious control on a daily basis, when an obstacle comes in the way, like a crisis, or you hear bad news, what's the first thing we do? Our mind is trained, and the nature of mind is to go outward. So what we have to do here is bring the mind inward. It's a whole different pattern. It's like learning to walk again.
It really is. It really is a very completely different way of processing life, processing experiences. I remember having a conversation with my husband that was like a difficult conversation. I remember watching it where typically it would have ended up in like just a blowout and just, walking away, and the end of conversation, we wouldn't have been able to get through it. And I remember him saying something that would have typically made me frustrated. I remember watching my thoughts and kind of sorting through them and sitting with it, and then being able to respond very calmly and thoughtful. And we kind of played this different game that we had never played before. And after that was all done, I remember thinking, that's what I've been doing in the mornings, like in my early morning things where I could sit and think through things and watch them and respond, and it is very different. And I think that's something that I did not understand that meditation could do, where it's bringing this consciousness, into like how you process almost everything.
That's an awareness. So you bring the awareness. It's training. You're really training your awareness. Not, and you're able to put your awareness wherever you want to put that. So if you want to put it on the discussion, there's functions of mind that people there's thoughts are only one part of mind. There's other parts of the mind. And so when we're in a practice and we want to be quiet, for example, even if you've been doing it 40, 50 years or whatever, there are still things that are in our memory bank, what we call chitta, in our memory bank, that are going to bubble up, and we wonder, gosh, why did I just have that? Or, as you said, what are my thoughts? Well, what are the other thoughts that are coming in the universe? That's where the real key, I have found that if you could bring your mind back into yourself, and you can do that with breath, pran, you can bring that in and you train it to go within, and you do train it with the breath. It's the easiest way to train it. You can train it in other ways, but I can't say I'm skilled enough to even know or do. This is what I've practiced. I only teach people not what I read or scripts, what I've practiced and what has been useful within what has been downloaded to me and given to me as a gift and a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to sit skillfully in meditation. That's a privilege this lifetime. And what I would say, and it doesn't even have to be me, find someone who's tuned in that knows the difference between a sound bite or just try this versus if you really want to learn a whole complete system, meaning it's when I say complete system, it's a systematic approach, like I just said, head, neck, and trunk aligned, breathing. Then you have to learn how to relax. Relaxation keeps you from allowing things to transpire for you. And then you bring yourself into more then awareness starts to come. Awareness comes only after you're relaxed to a certain point. And we're never thoroughly relaxed. We have to be very aware of that. And how do we know how relaxed we are? One of the first things I have people do is lie down, face down. And anybody who does yoga or asana would know. In the crocodile pose, you put your head, your head on your forearms and just breathe diaphragmatically. You'll automatically do it. You don't have to know how to do it. It automatically comes. And then you'll start connecting. You'll start seeing. And that's where you can use your body as a prescription for what's going on. Your breathing will tell you what is going on. Whenever we get upset about something, we tend to suck our breath in, creating more, and it creates a biological response or biochemical. That's my training. So it's a biochemical response within the body and mind and brain. So all of these things coming together, and I've been able in this lifetime, privileged again, to be the scientist where I did my doctorate over at Case Medical School. And I took the scientific knowledge that I took with the 20, 30, 40 years before that from the masters. You blend that together because you could see yoga is a science and it's based on science. And when it's understood, but within practice, because many have the practices without the science, and some people have the science, like you had written to me or asked me about what happens in our brain, our body. Yeah, there's lots of things that happen, but what's the interaction that really takes place? And that's where people will discover, you're going to discover the transformative journey. It's a transformative journey. There's no end. It's just the beginning. And like you said, very wonderfully said that, of course you're going to have thoughts. And I used to be told, let them come and let them go. But don't say, I've heard people say, well, I want to think of wonderful things I'm going to do, and that's my meditation. Well, no, that's distraction and fantasy, and that's okay. It's okay. But just know what is, what isn't. When you really become skillful enough, how you know how skillful you are in this life, and I still use it for myself, is count how many times you're disturbed a day, and it will tell you how much of a root you really have.
That is so good. Just count how many times
you're disturbed a day. We won't even go to distraction because we're in such a distracted society and world right now. But count how many times you get disturbed. Something
even just doing that, like if someone were to do that, it would bring awareness, even though
that's all we're doing.
I'm focused on this negative thing, or and you might be like appalled at how many times you're disturbed, but it shifts from the day before of just being disturbed and unaware of it an awareness of it, because as soon as you're aware of it, you can do something about it. It is what gives you power, is what I've learned in this
awareness
world.
Is the
awareness, as scary as awareness is, it is the thing that actually gives you power to do something about it.
It starts your trajectory towards freedom.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so much so.
You become free.
So I know, because I'm thinking of the person listening to this as a podcast, and anytime someone talks about breath, if you're just listening, you're like changing your breath. You're not really knowing, like, what should I be breathing? If you're talking to someone right now, they've never done anything like this before. Maybe they've just never even gone to a yoga class at all. Can you just give that person, just while they're listening right now to the rest of this episode, how could they be breathing right now that might just do something a little bit different for them?
Breathing from their diaphragm. So let's do a little exercise. If you're not driving, everyone, please. I have to be careful. Put your left hand on your chest, your right hand on your belly. For now, just for now. And take a breath. Yeah, your chest moved up. If your chest moves up, you're a chest breather. My chest didn't move up.
Interesting.
And so that's what gives people that anxiety all the time. That's what lets the adrenals not flow. That's what happens in menopause, where women are wondering why they're having such stress. Well, your stress hormones and your sex hormones compete. So I shouldn't say compete. Your hormones of health and your hormones that you want and stress compete for the same pathway, those same hormones. So the best thing I do when I have private clients is or groups, whatever, I say, let's work with the stress response. So what would you do now? Your chest, you're using your chest. That's why I said each morning I tell people just roll over before you get out, or do it in the middle of the day, roll over onto your abdomen, put your forehead down. You won't have to practice it. The body will automatically do diaphragmatic breathing because you're like this, right? You can't be lifting like that. It automatically, there's 3 steps in which I teach that. And as I told you, we should do a live workshop together. I mean, and I could teach all of this because it's not rocket science, but it's a skillful way because of my training and my understanding can deliver it and people will change. You can't do it by just breathe and no, that's the big problem. That's where my heart goes out, or my compassion. People are told just breathe. Well, how?
Right.
How?
Well, that's just it. There have been some practices that I've gone to, like a yoga practice, and
Yes.
they're counting the breaths and they're doing these things. And
You're
honestly, I
still using your
say, like,
chest.
there's some times where I'm like, I am like hyperventilating. I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or if it takes practice, but breath is it seems more and more complex the more I
It's the
get into
secret.
it. I'm like,
It's the secret to
I just
length.
breathe.
It's the secret to longevity. As the masters always said, it's not how many years you live, count how many breaths. So what I'm trying to say is, don't, and I'm glad you're bringing up your true self as I bring up mine. It's being genuine, and it's rare to find genuine things happening now. But if you have hyperventilation, which is understandable because no one ever instructed you on how to breathe using the diaphragm, and it took me to learn. I was floored. I was like, what, 20 years old at the time, and uh, I said, "Whoa, I've been breathing wrong all these years." But I was doing this just like everybody else. But now all I will do is I'll just, when I breathe, it's like the singer. I do this, right? These come out. And so it's the
Just
martial
putting
artist.
your hands you're putting your hands
Well, you want your rib
up
cage to expand because the,
on your
the
rib cage.
diaphragm is a muscle where it's a diaphragm is a muscle. If that muscle is weak, you're weak. Simple. Singers know how to use it. Martial arts, when I train martial arts, that's where your power is. Now people say go to your core, be powerful. Learn how to breathe through your core. That's step one. And I'm right there alone. I would say behavior, emotions, ups and downs, even your physiology, biochemistry, it'll all change. It
You know,
stimulates the vagus nerve.
I
I remember I was working. Well, I have to tell you something funny.
yes.
So I was working in psychiatry at Harvard, and then I worked New England for a while, and Harvard was one. And I was on my way taking a train because they were doing what we call grand rounds, whatever they were doing. And I remember they were going to do something on a vagal stimulator. I got so excited. Oh my gosh, they're bringing yoga into the world. This is amazing because I learned that 30 years ago about vagal responses. And I got there and they were talking about a little gadget that people have put in their bodies to stimulate the vagus nerve. But you can do that with your breath if you have the skill to do it. And diaphragmatic breathing does it naturally. If you look at a baby before the age of 5, they breathe through their belly. Just watch them. And see, once we get that persona or personality, we start sucking air. We start, we want to protect ourselves. It changes. But before the age of 5, you will see it in a child. And
Do you
5
think
cut off.
do you think that there is something about like women, like just the whole society of like not having a belly, like not wanting
Of
to have your
course there
belly poke out. Like we're constantly like every picture, everything we're standing in, and anytime we're just trying to suck our bellies in. So then our breath has to be up here. Like even honestly,
yeah.
I feel like I'm pretty comfortable in my body, but when somebody says like breathe through your belly, I'm like, oh, it's gonna stick out more,
Well,
like
no, no.
so
You know what? It's
interesting.
okay. I'm interrupting. Excuse me, but
No.
here's the thing about breathing through your belly. Breathing, I did that for 10 years because I wasn't doing diaphragmatic breathing correctly. You really want to breathe through the diaphragm, but the belly does come out a little bit. But here's the thing, and it's funny, I would have never known your age. People are still doing that belly thing with suck it in. My age, you'd suck it in, put your jeans on, and walk out, you know. But I didn't know they still do that. So that's very interesting. I'm learning from you. Here's the thing, and all of these images are created, and they're all fake. Everything you see is fake. Fake hair, fake teeth, fake eyes, because we're living in that age of people are obsessed with this external, and rightly so. You want to, I put a sweater on today. I usually wear a t-shirt. You do that when you're going to do something, but how far do you go? How far do you go where it compromises your who you really are? And if someone says, take a picture, when I see people, there was a comedian, he was so funny. He said, selfies are, what did he say? Lonelies. You're so lonely, you're taking selfie. It was so funny because people are spending their time. They should be sitting and breathing rather than really, we get to a point like who cares? You care. And you don't realize what it's doing on the subtlest level of yourself. The subtlest level. Meaning has to do with your connection with yourself. And we've discarded that connection, the love for our inner self. And when we don't love her, I'm going to use your word, or the self, that's where our problems. We're disconnected from that. And yes, once you start becoming healthy, I don't look like a model. I don't look like a model, but I choose not to because I want to maintain health at my age. And you know how old I am. So
Well, so as we're getting through this, we talked about like sitting in a, what did you call it? In a
a stable posture. You want to be stable and still. Two things.
stable and
Stable
still,
and
and
still.
then
So
the diaphragm
head,
breathing.
neck, and trunk aligned.
And then you're talking about relaxing, like when you're
That's the
sitting there.
third. That's the third
So
component.
I'm sitting here and I'm breathing. How am I relaxing? Am I kind of checking in with every piece of my body? Like,
Well,
what does that look like for you?
there's many ways to relax. If you don't breathe diaphragmatically, you should stick with that for the first month. Lie on the floor, breathing in crocodile, then roll on your back, put a sandbag or something on the belly, watch it go up and down. Do that for a month, 2 months. There's no rush. Then when you can sit and do that, then you can do the sitting posture and do whatever you need to do. But to try to do it all together is going to create stress and anxiety. Again, we have to be gentle with ourselves, but have the right training and the right coach to train you to do that. And I find it's rare to find because you go into a class, there's only so much time, and then everybody, we have to rush through things. There's never, people are doing meditation now because people want that, but are they really skilled in training in having the time and the effort to get you ready? Everything is crammed in. So and then after you do your relaxation, then you could bring your breath into the breath awareness right in this area here. This whole area here is the same as what your spinal cord would be, your spinal column. But you have to first learn how to breathe up and down your spine, even for a month. Feel what that feels like. You become the architect. You become the doer to find out how to do it with some instruction on how to do it on your own.
I think that's so
My
important.
teacher used to say, you become the architect of your life. That was what I was going to say. It's you are, use your body, as I say, use your body as feedback. Learn from, if you have a healthy body, you're very blessed. Use it to see what's going on. If you have a pain here, it tells you something about your posture, your mind. What are you thinking? You get a sick stomach because you had a thought, somebody said something or didn't. You're happy, you have a different response. You start going in and seeing, wow, interesting, interesting, interesting. That's the awareness training. So it's really
Okay.
awareness training. And then when you learn to focus that, I used to ride waves, but if you're going to ride a wave into the shore, you want to have your eye on where, because people say, I do mindfulness. And I say there's awareness and then there's focus. If you bring them together, it's like a bird with two wings. And I use the surfboard as an example. If you're riding a wave in, and we've all been on the beach, most of us, and you know where you have your little umbrella or your your blanket or whatever. If you don't watch that, you're going to be, the side current is going to take you this way. Those side currents are what take our mind way out. So it's like riding a wave.
Oh, that's such a good example. Everyone has done that.
Yeah,
Like,
we've
oh
all
my
done that.
gosh, my
Like,
blanket's way over
where's
there.
my blanket? Where did it go? Don't we do that even in meditation practice, where sometimes your one little thought, it comes so fast, you don't even know where it came from, and then you have this whole village that you've built, a whole story. And it's the same thing of riding the wave. Where did my So if you keep your mind, that's why I teach focused practices. If you keep your eye on that, your blanket, you don't drift that way. You
Right.
steer right where. That's what life is all about. Steer the way. There's going to always be those side waves, those rip currents. There's always going to be that. But you could go with the flow. You go with it when the rip current takes you. You don't fight a rip current, right? You don't fight that. So you
Right.
get an onslaught of thoughts. Don't fight them. Just say, oh, that's interesting. And just go right on. That's the
Yeah.
way I use nature for my metaphors of everything, because I love nature. I'm out in nature, and it really tells us a lot about ourselves. When nature's healthy, we're healthy. When we're healthy, nature's healthy.
I have to share something with you. And what's interesting about this is last night I was journaling some pretty heavy thoughts, and the thought came to me that while you and I were talking about this, that it would help me work through some of these thoughts, and I just wanted to share with you and maybe someone that might need this. This is kind of gives you an example of the power of learning to meditate and applying it to some pretty destructive thoughts that can come up. So you probably don't know this about me, but many, many years ago, my first marriage ended in a horrible, disastrous mess. He had an affair, and it was just kind of a horrible scenario of a lot of trauma. And I've done a lot to work through that, but there are these tiny triggers that happen now in my marriage that I love and have worked really hard to find trust and peace. And there's these tiny little things that happen, and it will spark this crazy flood of trauma back into my soul and my thoughts. And it is easy to get swept, like you said, down this wave and get thrown into these rip currents. And my husband went out of town. It's always when he goes out of town that my brain's like, who's he talking to? And, should I check the phone records? And it just goes crazy, which I have no basis, to need to go there. And last night, as I was looking at these thoughts, I was able to kind of apply what you just said. I didn't have to fight it. It was a rip current, but I could just kind of look at it and think, let's not do anything about it. Let's sit in this. There isn't anything to do. We don't need to freak out. We don't need to flail our arms or make crazy decisions or decide anything. Let's just flow through, and we'll get caught, and we'll be able to get to the shore. And I was able to walk through that and say, like, well, yeah, you have trauma. Like, that thing happened, and that's why you feel these things. And it's just a different way. It's not happening to you. You're kind of able to just sit in it and again, like, not fight the current, but also know that you can get to shore, that this isn't anything that you need to do anything with. It's just here. And I just want to tell you like how much I appreciate that that analogy, because it is so helpful to me, like in the space that I'm in, really, right now, where I'm able to apply that and understand that, I can respect my past experiences, I can honor them, but also be aware of what's real and what's not, and really like love myself and care for myself and be able to get myself to shore on my blanket, right?
Okay, so here, let's go, if you want me to just comment on that.
I love that.
This will
Yes.
be a little cue for you. Look at where you are now. Now, you said wake her up is your motto. Okay. Meet yourself, whatever. How about trust yourself? So, if we trust that and we trust that everything comes to us the way it needs to, look at where you are now. If you were still in that situation, you wouldn't be where you are today with me talking. And if anything were to come down the road again, it would only be to bring you in a better place. And if you reframe it in that way, rather than I don't want this to happen or in a fearful, it'll still come up, but I'm giving you a way out of it instead of really holding it. Just you look at it, every woman has a story. I can guarantee that. Many stories. I have many stories also. And knowing that I can say this now as the elder oldie here, is we're able then to just say, look at where you are today. The divine was in you, brought you here, took him away. You have a new person. The divine brought that. Embrace it, because nothing is permanent in life. I understand trauma, though, especially with children involved and everything else. So I understand all of that. However, these things do exist. And the way I always started approaching it, and recently, it took me years though, is people are taken out of our life, girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, wives. It's tough. It's a tough nut to crack, but we're on a journey. And for some reason, this journey is a solo journey because we don't take anybody with us when we leave. And we didn't take anybody with us when we came in, except the divine that's within us. So make friends with that, wake her up, and then meet her and sit down with her and start trusting her. We'll do something together to make that happen. And you will become so peaceful, even though those things still will come up. And that's okay. We're human beings. We live in a world like that. We have feelings. Who wants somebody not to talk to you, have an affair, not have an affair? The woman that has the, who people that do that though are they're really digging their own chaos because it just happens that way. You know, we have a karmic responsibility to people we marry, the children, etc. It's not in our hands to decide who stays, who doesn't. So just take it that you've been blessed with that opportunity now to grow and fly on your own. And that's the way I saw it as soon as you told me, even though we're on live stream, we might have to cut it out, but that's exactly what you need to be doing so that you don't, yeah, it's done. And it was done for that reason.
And
Done.
to remember that, right? Like the
What was calling?
society
Here you
and
have my
everyone
number.
around you will speak of these traumatic things,
Yes, yes.
that they're trauma and they're stuck in you and they're bad, and that you fall into depression and self-destruction because of these things that happen. And you're right, you're exactly right. Everything that society would look at my life and say that's bad, that was traumatic, those were destructive things, like you're going to have to go dig those out of you. You are exactly right. Like those are things that were part of my journey that has led me into beautiful experiences,
That's right.
beautiful understandings, beautiful people, beautiful opportunities. And I think that if we can remember those pieces, then anything going forward, like you said, way in the beginning, when destruction happens and chaos happens just today, or it doesn't go your way, or people don't like you, remembering that yes, society might look at those as really bad, but you can look at them as opportunities to grow, really positive journeys, and just simply existence, But it all comes back to why we're even having this conversation in the first place. It comes down to you knowing you. That's the only way that you can like float through these waves, is when you know who you are and you trust yourself and you are in love with you. Because,
And
like
that
I said,
takes
we're not getting out of here with anybody else.
and that takes time, and
It does.
time is okay. It just needs to be you need to be surrounded by people that understand that, and it will help you. As I said, it's not that you're not gonna feel, "Wow, that didn't feel good," and it's not that it's acceptable what he did, but what it does say is, "Okay, I feel this way. Let me now sit back, allow the feeling." Grief is grief. I mean, you don't deny it. You're a human being. However, when it comes up, I'm just saying, hey, that's what I mean by when we have these experiences, these awakening experiences. Yes, we have them, but to really, I want to say, I was going to use the word own them, but that's too much of a strong word. But to be so aware of it, where you don't have to, how many times are you disturbed a day, and how long does the disturbance last? That's another one that will tell you how connected you are to that inner self. And believe me, or if you've been knocked out, let's say you're knocked out for a few hours, how long does it take you to come back? So that's what this whole practice is about. Let me come back. Let me keep coming back so that I can live functionally. Because we do need to go out, but then come back, go out. And that's the practice. And then when you practice that, that's how people, you practice coming in and out of yourself. That's what birth and death is all about.
It's it's so lovely to talk to someone that has this kind of same understanding, because one, I feel less crazy, because one of the things that I do just throughout the day, just doing my thing, is it is this out and back experience. And I sometimes think of myself as these two kind of entities, like I have this spiritual soul entity and then this human body physical entity. And sometimes I will think of it as like if I wanted to visit my body, and be almost like in this human experience as if it's like an alien or something. And, being in this body, I get to feel different things and experience different feelings. And then it makes it this interesting experience. So then when fear comes up or doubt comes up, you're just looking at it as like, isn't that interesting that I get to feel that? Maybe in my existence without a body, maybe I didn't feel fear like this. I didn't feel doubt like this. And it has made the human experience for me so much more interesting and exciting, almost like, being at Disneyland, where you get to ride all these different rides and feel all these different feelings, because we're here like being in our body. And so I love that you're using that, like coming back in and out and in and out, because I think we forget that we can exist beyond our body. And getting to know your soul and understanding that almost gives you a bigger respect for the human experience and for your body and what it is allowing you to feel. And that makes life a little more doable.
That's the beauty of having a body. And it's knowing yourself. We have to know ourselves. And then your diet changes, your exercise routines change, the way all your lifestyle habits, which, as you know, I teach that, it's part of the programs that I do. You really have lifestyle, just lifestyle things, that we really need to be able to monitor all of those. People, they want to meditate, and I used to say, no, why don't you just go run around the block before you sit down? How could you expect, if you're stressed, to just sit down on a cushion and be relaxed? Your body is full of neurohormones that are causing all this agitation, right? So what we need to do is we need to be educated, knowledge, and I combine both knowledge and practice, because one without the other, it's one thing I could speak intellectually about the brain and this and the stuff, the gut microbiome, blah, 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 blah. But unless you have a practice to apply so that you could experience that, but the knowledge is what keeps it anchored. And that's why if I say, okay, breathe diaphragmatically, I wouldn't say to you just breathe diaphragmatically. I would tell you why. It affects the vagal response, the parasympathetic nervous system. It causes the relaxation response. Chest breathing causes a sympathetic stimulation, which causes you to be more hyper. You can tell by someone's voice and their tone how grounded they are, how not grounded they are, because that's your voice. It comes forward. It comes forward based on your whole neurological network. That's why when I used to teach teachers, I did teacher training for meditation. And when they would get up, I said, you're going to see some people you can listen to and some people you don't want to. What is the difference? Because we portray, there's no hiding. You could get all this external stuff, but there's no hiding. You can read someone loud and we sense it. Just like a dog would sense a person. Sometimes they walk up to somebody and they happy. Sometimes they'll growl and stay away because they read the subtle body. The subtle body is what you can see. We some unconsciously in many cases, but you can usually see someone, size it up, and you see what they're going through, and then you can become very effective in helping and teaching. It's not a judgment thing here. No one should be judged because we all of us have issues to work out. All of us have the traumas, whatever that is, that perceived trauma. Somebody else would look at somebody else's trauma as, oh, well, I was glad, or not. Very rare. But what I'm trying to say is the trauma is a little different than an experience. So let's keep trauma where it is. Most people agree on the same traumas. And,
Right.
there are ones that exist, but we have to learn to transcend all of that at this point. I'm seeing because we're going to see a lot more of this uh, behavior that's really unstable in the whole culture right now. And what do we do? That's why you see a lot of meditation now popping up. Where, I mean, 20 years ago when I started, 30 years of teaching, 25, whatever, there weren't many. There were like two of us, three of us out there, and uh, now you can get it on every street corner. It's like, and because people, it's in need, and you have to find a place where it feels right for you and whatever feels right, but it has to be done systematically, and that's the key.
I have loved this conversation, and we need to have many, many, many more.
Okay.
I want to say, everyone's always looking for this quick fix. I think that, meditation and yoga does and can look and come across as this fad that, a lot of women in this midlife experience are jumping over to yoga just because like everybody else is doing it. But there is something here. There is a reason why women are being drawn to this. It's not a fad. It's not just this new like cool workout thing that you should be doing because everybody else is doing it. There is a beautiful power that comes with sitting still and breath and going inward and knowing yourself. And it is this thing that people are finding in massive ways now. And that's why you're seeing it so on every corner. But for me, I think I did think it was this fad thing. I needed to go to the Lululemon and get my cool yoga stuff to have my meditation practice, and it's just so, so much more than that. So I want to welcome you to come back over and over and share your vast knowledge with us and really help us find that power within us and to give us that awareness and reminder of how to do it and to be able to practice it enough so that we can hear what our body and souls need as an individual. And I'm excited for our community, our followers, our listeners to really be curious about this. And like you said, if all you do today is start asking yourself, like, how many times am I, disrupted today? How many times am I in turmoil today and frustrated? Like that alone, that is so good. That brings people to an awareness right now, right today. And then you start trusting yourself and you start watching it. And with a guide like you, is so exciting to understand the science behind it. And I'm excited to get into more information and more knowledge with you. And I just want to thank you so much for your time today. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I was thinking, I did put a course up for March. I believe I only do a waiting list just to see if people are interested. We can do something, and
Oh,
on my website. Yes, I would come and contribute to this. I love your mission, and I'm glad we met. And I would be more than happy to be able to serve your community at any time.
thank you so much. Well, for anyone that wants more information about Susan, please go to susantaylor.org. Is that the best place for everyone to find you?
Yeah, I also have a Facebook group. It's called Meditative Shift,
Okay.
and Facebook if they wanted to come into the community. But yeah, .org is fine, and
Wonderful.
that's great. And I'll see you, and we'll be in touch.
Wonderful. And if anyone needs more information and you want to see more of our podcast, you can go to wakeherup.co, and you can also follow Wake Her Up on Facebook group. There's over 42,000 women globally in our community, and we would love to have you there. And with that, everyone, have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.